I won't be able to use the recordosaurus when it shows up. All right.
Are you going to live share with us?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for reminding me. Let me turn that back on. Live share. Boom. There we go. Okay. So let's figure out where we were. Okay. So we have to deal with the player busting. So we've talked about component did mount. And one thing I want to do is I want to move this component did mount up higher in the code. So I feel like these component did mount hooks should appear towards the top because they're kind of React-based things. So I'm just going to move that function to the top. No functional change, just organizational change. So in addition to component did mount, let's see if this works. There's a component did update callback. Let's put inside of component did update just a console log that says updated. Because I think what we can do is inside of this component did update, put the logic to check to see if somebody busted or got 21. Because every time the state changes, this component did update will get fired. So what we should see in our console is a whole bunch of updateds. Yep, it updated three times. So I think what we can do is say something like this. If player, what did we call it? Total hand. If total hand for the player is more than 21, we're going to set some kind of state. And we're going to talk about an issue that Chris ran into, because I think we're probably going to run into the same issue. We'll see if we run into it or not, Chris, the infinite state update. Question?
Should it not be equal to?
We're going to just do busted.
Okay.
We're just going to do busted first. So I think before we figure out what state to change, if I remember correctly, in our HTML down here, we had this game results. So let's replace test your skills with this dot state dot, and we'll call it game status. No, he called it game results. Let's call it game results. We'll keep our naming consistent. Game results. So we're going to have something here that tells us the results of the game. And let's make that state up here, by default, test your skills. Oh, and this is going to be this dot total hand. So now we have some place to put a message when we bust. Right? Test your skills, and if here we say this dot set state game results to player busted, we'll see what happens. So in component did update, every time the state changes, we'll check if the total hand for the player is over 21, we'll also change the state to player busted. So let's see what happens now. Well, I want to leave my console up. I just want it smaller. Come on. Where are you? Where are you, resizer? There you are. Let's see what happens. Hit. Right, we got this issue. This is what Chris and I were talking about on the break. What's happening is when the component did update gets called, we're checking to see if we're over 21, and then we're changing the game results, which causes component did update to be called, which checks to see if we're over 21, which changes the state, which calls component did update gets called. So we need some way of knowing if the game is playing or if the game is over. So Chris had in his app, and I think we need in ours, is some kind of playing flag. Then what we can say is if the total player hand is more than 21, and this dot state is playing, then check this and set the playing flag to false. And that will stop this from checking and trying to change the state. So now we have two new bits of state, and I'm going to put them together just for organization. A game results string that tells the human what's going on, and a playing flag that tells the game what's going on. And in our component did update, we'll ask, hey, if the player has more than 21 and the game is still going, then please change the game results to the player busted and mark that we're not playing anymore. Now we should be okay to have, right, player busted, and we don't keep changing the state.
I'm not really clear on how that happens. So it seems to me if all we're changing is the heading, then shouldn't it just do that when we...
It does, but what happens is component did update gets called anytime we call set state. So anytime we get call set state, component did update also happens.
So is that a loop it's creating?
Mm-hmm. So what would happen is if we didn't have this check for playing, we get dealt a card, state changes, component did update gets called. We're over 21, so we call set state, which causes component did update to get called. We check if we're over 21, we are, so we call set state, which calls component did update to be called, which checks if we're over 21, and we are, so we call set state over and over and over again. And eventually React says, hey, wait a minute, we're in an infinite loop here. So we have to check to say, only change this state if we're playing. Only if we've recently gone over 21 and the game is still going, do this. Otherwise, there's nothing to do.
And how does the game know what playing is? What playing true or false is?
It doesn't have to know anything. It's just a state. So when we start the game, it's already playing. As soon as we go over 21, change the message and tell the game it's no longer playing. So we're just toggling this playing from true to false. So when this component did update gets called, this is going to be what? False. And this whole if statement will fail.
Wow.
Because we are over 21, but we are not playing. So this will become true, you're over 21, and false, you're not playing, so please don't do this. Yeah. The other way you could do this is you could say something like, if you're over 21, right, if this.state.playing, right, you can nest it in an if like this,
Right.
or what you can do is do a card clause. Hey, if we're not playing, just return. You can do it this way as well, right? If we're not playing, there's nothing to do here. I don't care what updated. Kenny?
Is update getting called again when you click it again?
Every time the state changes, component did update gets called. So every time you call set state, when set state is done, React will call component did update. So component did update gets called after React is done with any set state.
Is it calling did mount too?
No, because it's not mounting the component, it's just changing. So every time state is churning or changing, component did update gets called. So it's a good place to put a check like this, because no matter where we're hitting or staying or dealing, this code is being called. So if there's code that needs to happen after any time state changes, component did update is a good place to put it.
No matter what program we write, component did update will get called again.
No matter what code we do that changes state, any code that changes this component state will cause this component did update to be called. So it gets called when we do this. It gets called when we do, where else are we calling this? Deal cards, right? It gets called here. It gets called here. Anytime this set state is called, when that's done, component did update gets called.
So it seems to me like, I mean, if you were designing React, like, why would you not have, like, if we're replicating the same value, why would we not stop this loop? Is that just poor design?
I'm not sure their design reason for it. Like, why, since we're setting the state to the same thing, would we bother calling component did update?
Yeah.
Let's Google and see. Component did update when state isn't changing. So we do get here's probably why, because they're going to give you the previous state and they're leaving it up to you to determine why. That's probably why.
Okay, that's another way that you could guard against it with
Yeah.
the previous state.
Yeah, you could just check to see, hey, is the game results message changing? If so, then we want to change. We want to not do this, right? I don't know why they call it regardless of whether or not you're changing a value to the same thing. It's a good question. I don't know why. It's probably more complex for them to tell that than it is for you to just deal with the logic of your program, would be my guess.
It's a speed issue, right?
It's probably the case that there might be a reason why you want to know that set state was called, even though the value is staying the same. There could be a developer somewhere where, to their logic, they want to know that. And if they prevented that, then they're
undo it.
Exactly, right? There's no way to satisfy that developer who wants to be called, even if the state is being changed from A to A. So that's probably why. Now they could have one of like, set state was called, and another one called state is changing, right? They could have given you both of those. Then the developer who just wants to know anytime set state is called has it, and the one who, like, I only want to know when it's actually changing could also have it, but they didn't. That's kind of my guess.
Okay.
So it also doesn't make sense to allow the player to keep busting. So here, what we can say now. Oh, let's commit this. Adds check for player busting inside component did update. So now we can add a guard clause here. Same thing. If we're not playing, right, just return. Don't allow cards to be dealt in a game that is over. Right. So if we block this here, now when we bust, right, we can't get any more cards. I'm clicking, but nothing's happening. We could also hide these. We could hide these buttons potentially, because it looks like there's a hidden state here. So potentially, what would happen if we put hidden on this? Yeah. So what we can do inside of here is we could change this to be a dynamic string and say, if this dot state playing is true, then nothing, otherwise hidden. Now this hit button will go away, right? And we could do the same thing down here, is we can change this to a dynamic string and add if this.state.playing is true, don't add any more classes, but if it's over, add the hidden class to the stay button. So now when we go over, both of them go away. Right, we're just adding a little bit of logic right inside of the class. But this is duplication. So maybe what we do is we add a little function called button class. And we'll just put the logic in here. So return if this.state.playing, let's return nothing, otherwise let's return hidden. All I'm going to do is move this logic inside of a helper function. And then let's put it here.
Would that be a design choice you would make if you were to write this yourself?
I would. Yeah, I would do it. I would do this because I don't want to have that in here twice.
That would be.
Yeah. Oh, I mean in terms of like hiding the buttons?
Oh, no, I'm just saying, like, would you?
The code refactoring.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would do the code refactoring. So let me show you a feature of any more questions on this so far, because I want to show you a feature in a second of classes.
It was just this.state.playing ternary, and then an empty string, else colon. hidden.
Yep. The other way we could do this, and this is tricky, is we could do this, I think. Nope. We could say, if not this.state.playing, return hidden. If you don't like the, if they don't like the ternary. Hit, yeah, like so. Either way. So notice here that this button class is kind of like an attribute of this game. We're not passing it anything, and every time we call it, we're not passing anything. We just want to know what's the button class currently. This happens so often that the class format gives us the ability to have getters and setters. Getters and setters are methods. We got to write them this way. Methods that look like attributes. So if we change this button class to look like this, then you don't have to put the parentheses here. And it looks like button class is just a variable on the object. So you will see this for this kind of data. Hey, I just want to know what the button class is for the current object. They'll put a getter on it. They'll say get the button class, which means now every time I want to use it, I just say this.button class.
So I had asked you before when we were talking about is there only way to do it is component did now. You could do the getter, would that be a bad idea?
Yes, because the get is only meant to be a different way of writing this kind of thing. All it does is simplify not having to put parentheses here.
Okay.
And it makes it look, yeah, it makes it look like it's not a function call, it makes it look like it's an attribute. Like, because we can also do something like this, right? This dot tacos is 42, right? That's an attribute of this object. We're saying the tacos attribute of this class is 42. And then elsewhere in the code, you can just say, right, if this dot tacos is 42. But what if tacos was a more complicated thing than just a variable? It was like, had to do some computations. So the getter is a way of having something that looks like an attribute, but actually does computations. So a getter function looks like an attribute, but is really a function. Let me remove this, right? You don't have to use them. It's syntactic sugar. It's syntactic friendliness. If you don't like getters, and some people don't, right? Just leave it be a function. And every time you want to know the button class, right, the syntax is this instead. Totally fine. There's a couple of things that getters allow you to do later on that are more flexible, but if you don't like them, just leave the function call in. It's just syntactic sugar for leave off the parentheses when I access this, make it look like it's an attribute. Cool. So we have busting working. Let's make the dealer hit work. Actually, let me commit this. I think I have some commits to do. Detects players busting and removes buttons when that happens. Let's let the dealer hit. So that happens on stay. So here, let's add an on click for this dot stay. Right? Just like we have a this dot hit, we'll have a this dot stay. Here is our hit function. Let's make a stay function. And for now, let's just deal one card to the dealer. And let's just see when we stay, does this cause one card to go to the dealer? No, let's hit. We've got 16, let's stay. Yeah. The dealer now has, what, 17, right? And if we keep staying, right, the dealer gets more cards, right? But that's not what we want it to actually do. What do we want it to do? We want it to loop, right, and keep hitting until the dealer has more than 17, and then stop. 17 or more. Keep hitting until he's 17 or more. So let's try this. Let's see what happens if we do while this dot total hand for the dealer is less than 17. Let's deal cards to the dealer. Right? We might have an issue here because deal cards, remember, uses Axios and it's in the background, right? So we can't necessarily do this nice little while loop because when we call deal cards, it's going to be done before the card actually arrives in the dealer's hand, right? Because deal cards does Axios, then we get a response. So this is kind of asynchronous, right? This deal cards, right? We don't, when deal cards is done and returns, the card isn't really in that hand yet until set state is done. And that's not done until Axios is done. So this code looks good, but it's gonna have some problems because this is gonna return right away before the card is actually in the dealer's hand, before we can actually check the value of the dealer's hand. So I think what's gonna happen is, yeah, we're in like an infinite loop in our browser, right? It's just dealing cards and cards and cards and cards, and our browser is locked up, right? So what we need to do is we need to tell that this deal cards has to wait until it's done. And this is where that async await is gonna help us. So we're finally gonna have a chance to use async await. Wow, look, my browser's totally hosed. So let's see if I can kill it. Die, browser, die. So let's get the browser back up and not hit the stay button until we're fairly sure this is working. Right? This is the challenge of the asynchronous JavaScript nature. This is not React. This is just the way JavaScript works. Right? This is going to be, in all kinds of JavaScript. It's one of the great things about JavaScript, and it's one of the terrible things about JavaScript. It's one of the great things about asynchronous programming, and one of the terrible things about asynchronous programming is things that you think would work one way don't, because when we click on hit, we don't actually notice that the button is done with its work, and then sometime later, the card appears. And in user interface, asynchronicity is really nice. Click the button. What if the mouse paused until the card arrived? That would stink, right? Because your mouse would be janky as you were trying to work your way around. But in a tight loop like this, asynchronous is kind of fighting us. So I think what we can do is we can say, await for the dealer cards to be done. Await. But what's going to happen is we have to mark this function as asynchronous. And I always get this wrong, where this has to be.
You think you're gonna get it wrong?
Yeah. There it is, it goes here. So we have to tell the stay function you're asynchronous now. If your function uses await, it becomes blocking. You have to tell the function that's using it, you are now asynchronous, right? This doesn't matter if this is asynchronous because it's the handler for this button. Of course it's asynchronous, right? We want to be able to click the button. We don't care that things are happening. We want control of our browser back. That's fine. So we've made this deal cards, wait until that card is dealt, then check the total for the hand, then wait for deal cards to be done, then check for total. And I think now, oh no, it's broken again.
Is there supposed to be a parentheses after a wait?
No,
Like while now?
no. But we're still in a loop dealing cards. Thought this would wait for this deal cards to be done, but maybe not. Maybe we've got to make deal cards. Maybe what we've got to do is make deal cards synchronous. So let's go back for a second and we'll make deal cards synchronous. So what we'll do is we will make this await and we'll make this asynchronous. Right? We'll actually make the deal cards. Nope, this is still going to be a problem.
Can you use component.update, or is that not gonna?
No, because then we'd be doing two things in one bit. Oh boy, we have to think about this for a second. Right? So this is the complication of asynchronous programming. We want deal cards to, once we deal a card, we want to know if the dealer's total hand has changed. So deal cards has to become asynchronous. What happens if we make this asynchronous? Let's see. Right, so this will wait for the Axios to be done. But then this is going to be asynchronous, which will mean that now, I think here, we can go back to this being an await and this being asynchronous. This is the part that makes this stuff hard. Let's see what happens now if I stay. Okay, but nothing happened. I can still, yeah. Oh, hey, it is working. Good call, thank you.
What?
This worked.
What happened?
It worked, but I was on 7. I clicked on it like, oh, nothing happened because I had 17. I was so convinced that the code was going to fail. So here's what we've done. here's what we've done. By the way, has anybody has seen this, right? If you're looking at the Git thing here, if you click on one of the files, it will show you side by side what's been changed. Anybody use this? Yeah. So now I have this little side by side view. So what we did was we made deal cards asynchronous because we made the Axios wait. Right? So now deal cards is not going to return until it's actually dealt a card. So deal cards, right, is going to wait on the Axios. Then we said our stay function will wait for the card to be dealt, which means that it's asynchronous. So now this tight loop will work, right? Because we're going to wait for the card to be dealt, and then we're going to check for the total of the hand. Then we're going to wait for the card to be dealt. Then we're going to check for the total of the hand. But because we set a wait here, we have to say async here. And that doesn't really matter too much because stay is a callback on a click. So now hopefully, let's see if we can get a low set of numbers for that's 15, it's 20, it's 18. I'm hoping to get like, here we go, 6, right? So hopefully he'll take a couple of cards.
Do you have to commit to close the dual screen? The split changes?
No, you just close that window. Now that this is working, let me put it side by side. Right? So if you're looking at your commits and you do this to make that display go away, it's just in one window. Right? It's just in the working tree here. You can just close this little window, the one that popped open.
That's a really cool feature.
Yeah. In the terminal, it's the same as typing git diff. And that will show you all the differences. But I would argue that VS Code's display is a little bit nicer than this one. So what you have here is all the minus and red lines are the lines that are going away, and all the plus green ones are the ones that are showing up. This is not as pretty as this. You got a question?
Have you ever not been able to close a React app? Like it completely froze and I
Yes.
couldn't close it.
Yes, so that was happening to me when this stay was not asynchronous. So you have to close the entire browser window, and sometimes you gotta wait a little while. There is a key you can hit for Chrome that will bring up like a little Chrome task manager, and you can kill it off. If not, you might have to kill Chrome.
Can you force quit it from the dock? Or?
You can force quit it from the dock. You could bring up Activity Manager, but you should be able to click on the X, and eventually Chrome will come around and say, fine, I'll kill this tab. There's also, I think it's, let me see if I can remember what it is. Nope, that's not it. Chrome Task Manager key. There's a key you can hit. It's like Control-Delete, Shift-Escape. Shift-Escape. No. How to open Chrome's Task Manager. All right, fine, yes. What's the key though? Shift Escape. Is it Command Escape on the Mac? Option Escape?
I think you have to install an extension, right?
Is it? I thought it was built in. I thought it was built in. How to open Chrome Task Manager on the Mac. Kill Chrome tabs with Task Manager. Has a built-in Task Manager. You can get to it from there. If not, there's no key? Boy, oh boy, I thought there was a key. There used to be a key you could hit. So let me commit this code so that you all can use it. Uses async await to be able to deal cards in a loop. This way, our browsers don't. Okay.
So after I did that split screen to check your commits,
Mm-hmm.
I lost my bottom toolbar that allowed me to use hit from down there.
Did you?
Yeah, it's super strange.
It may just be that it's tucked it away because of
The size.
the size.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, because the same thing happened to me like the first 3 times I did it. It's because it's using space for the other parts of the status bar. Okay, so now we just need a win and a lose. All right. So we need to know win or lose that after the dealer has hit, now we can check winning and losing. So if, let's see, so we should say if the total for the hand of the, should we be able to do this? If the total for the player is greater than the total hand for the dealer, then we'll set this set state. Playing is false. And what did we call it? Game status? Game results. Game results is player wins. But if the player hand is less than the dealer hand, then the dealer wins. And what did we decide if they were equal?
Push
It's a push? Yeah.
or wait, or does the dealer win?
Dealer ones.
They're equal, we'll make the dealer win.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's casino rules, dealer win, right?
Yeah.
Let's see what happens.
They would definitely want
So we've got 11. So let's hit. We've got 17. Let's stay.
Go to the faces if they're tied above 21.
The dealer wins.
No, you wouldn't want to do that because.
What do I need to do to
Blackjack is
keep that from
supposed to just-
happening? I've had to restart my
The
internet
dealer
3
winning
times.
is-
So look at the code that's in the app.js now. We did 2 things.
Why are you able to?
We made deal cards async, and we added a weight to Axios. So we said, hey, let's make deal cards await Axios, and we'll make deal cards asynchronous.
Hi, buddy.
Then,
Oh, I don't have a weight Axios in deal cards. Is that probably what it is?
yeah, so await Axios and dealer cards is async. And then on stay, we said await deal cards. So it'd be nice if we could hide these cards, and then once we're staying, show the dealer cards, right? And if we were really doing the rules, we would show 1 card, right? And let you display. We've got 15 minutes.
I've got the back saved.
Do you have that in your,
Yeah, it should be in GitHub.
yeah, let's go get that from, let's go get it from your repository. So in Toby's, gotta scroll all the way back. Toby's Blackjack, in his public directory, in his images, this guy. So let's download this, and then we'll say file, no, let's do save image as, and let's go put it in cohort XII. You're gonna put this in your project, but I'm gonna go find it in React Blackjack source, and let's call it card dash back. Card back. So now what we want is we want this hand to decide whether or not it's going to show the cards or show the backs. Right? The hand has to decide, are we showing the cards or are we showing the backs? So let's do this. Let's come up with a property to send the hand to decide what it's going to show. So let's something like, let's call it hidden. And by default, for the dealer, we'll make it true. Right? So we're going to say hidden is true property for the hand. And in the hand.js, we will import card back. Is that what we called it? Should be in here. Yep, card back. Import card back from cardback.jpg.
PNG, I think.
Thank you. He just told me that. PNG. Card. Oh, dot slash. I need dot slash. Thanks for telling me, React. There we go. Now, we want to change this source based on if we're showing. So let's do this. Let's make a const, and we'll call it card source. Is going to be if this dot props dot hidden, then we're going to show the card back. Otherwise, we'll show the card image. Right? We'll make a little ternary that if the prop hidden is true, we'll show the card back. Otherwise, we'll show the card image. And inside of here, we'll say card source. There we go. Right. Now the cards are face down. Now we just need some way of changing this hard code from true to false. So let's make this a state. Let's make this state called player stayed. Right? Has the player stayed yet? So this false can just become this dot state dot player stayed. Right? Nope, sorry. Player state is false. We want this to be, let's change it. Let's call it dealer. Let's call it dealer taking cards. And that we're still gonna have the same problem. I want this to be true when it's hidden. So what do we want to call this? I want a variable name that says, let's just call it dealer cards hidden. Dealer cards hidden. Let's not make it too complicated. Dealer cards hidden is true. And we'll just make a state that tells us whether the dealer cards are hidden or not. What did I do? Did I just typo something? I did. Dealer cards hidden. There we go. So we just have a state now that tells us if these cards are hidden. Now, when the player clicks on stay, one of the early things we can do is say this dot set state dealer cards hidden is false. And what should happen now when we stay is it reveals the cards.
Isn't just the first card is
Yeah.
okay.
And eventually we'll get to that level of complexity. So let's commit this. So we'll say hiding dealer cards until the player stays. Yeah, let's do what Kenny says. Right? So this is,
Not very often.
yeah, this is, well, that's not true. That's not true. So we only want to do this for the first, so the first card is always shown, right? So let's change this turner to say, if the index is greater than 0 and we're hiding cards, show the card back. If this is the first card, if the index is 0, we don't care what the hidden is. We're always going to show the card image. So the logic is the card source is going to be the card back if we're later than the first card and we're hidden. So now the first card is shown, and we stay, and we see everything. Now, let's add in showing, instead of showing face down, actually, let's commit this. Reveals the first card of the hand always. So it'd be nice now is to have this face down replaced with the dealer's total after they started to play, right? So this here. So let's make a function called render dealer message. And for now, let's just have it return face down. Right? And then here, let's change this hard-coded with this dot render dealer message. Right? We're just replacing that hard-coded string with the result of calling a function. Right? So it says face down. But now we can say if this dot state dot dealer cards hidden, show face down, otherwise show this dot total hand for the dealer. So now the dealer message, and maybe what we want is something that says the total is the total, right? So the dealer's message is going to be, if their cards are hidden, show face down, otherwise show the total for the hand. So we've got 12 and he's got a face card, so let's take a hit. Ah, we busted. Start over. We've got 13, we've got 15, we busted. 21, stay. We win, right? And we see the total, right? So remember, all these things about what do we show on the screen is always going to be based on state. So if you're like, I want to show the face down message or show the dealer's total, you just have to consider, do I have a state variable that tells me when I want to do one thing or do the other? We decided that we already had the state that says whether or not the dealer's cards are hidden, and we use that to determine if we're showing face down or showing the dealer's total.
What did you call your card backs when you saved them?
I called it card-back.png. I called it card-back.png. You can call it whatever you like, as long as it matches what's here. So let's commit this. I wish this stayed all the time. And what did we do now? We're showing the dealer's total after we stay.
sourcey.
In the source directory.
That's what I was.
Yeah. So the images go in the source directory.
That's what I did.
In public, yeah. So maybe what we want is a play again button. Do we have time? We've got a couple minutes. Right? You've got this here. So let's change this play again button to appear. All right? This is hidden if this.state.playing is true, then this is hidden. Otherwise, it's nothing. So now I think this button will appear. Let's just bust on purpose. Now the play again button appears, right? We're dynamically considering whether or not this button is hidden based on the state of the game. Dynamically decide if the play again button is shown or not. Now let's hook it up to a function. On click, this dot play again.
Something's wrong.
What's that?
I just got 18, and the dealer got 24, and the dealer won.
Oh, because we're not checking for the dealer busting. You're right. Cool. Before we do the play again, let's fix that. Good call. So in our function, we need something that says if this dot total hand for the dealer is more than 21, player wins, and we have to stop. We've got to leave. Realistically, we probably want all of these to be returns, right? All of these are independent. There's no way that all of these can be something. But realistically, once we determine what this is, we should stop. So let's see if we can reproduce that. I've got 15. There we go. 15 and 25, and the player wins. Good catch. This is the reason why like testing our apps is so important. We would have found that. Cool. Let's commit that. Adds a check to see if the dealer busted. Thanks, Kenny. Good call. All right, let's go back to what we were doing, which is our play again. And that'll wrap this up. So on our button, let's add an on click for this dot play again. And let's make a play again function. Let's consider what we have to do. We could do this a couple ways. We could force the page to reload, right? Let's see if we can do it without it. Let's see if we can figure out how to put the state back to where we want it to be. So let's split our screen so we can have play again on the screen. So playing will be true. Dealer cards hidden will be true. The game results will be test your skills. The player's hand will be empty. The dealer's hand will be empty. And the deck ID will be unknown. Boy, this kind of looks like the initial state, right?
Yeah.
So what we could do is we could create a constant here. We could say this dot initial state is all of this. And then down here, we could just say this dot state, the initial state. Oh, I don't have to do this dot. I can just say initial state equals. Did I do something wrong? What am I doing wrong? Let's make it all capitals like this. Where's it complaining? Oh, it's complaining on line 180. Because I forgot that this. Trying to fix a bug in the wrong spot. This dot initial state. Okay, yes. We make an initial state. And then when we start, we make the state the initial state. And when the game restarts, we make the state initial state. All right, we're just clearing the state back to what we want it when a game is starting. But, right, we're not dealing cards, and we're not asking for a new deck. So this component did mount needs to come out and be a function. Let's call this start game. Let's move this component did mount into a function called start game. And then when the component did mount, we'll call this dot start game. Does this work? It does. And then for play again, we can call this dot start game. Right? So all start game is going to do is the Axios get deal some cards thing. And then play again, we're going to make the state the initial state, then ask us to start a game. So let's bust on purpose, and then play again. And bust on purpose, and then play again. Let's bust on purpose, and play again. We could argue that this dot set state could go inside of here. Oops. Right, maybe this belongs in here. I think you could argue both. If that's true, then we actually don't need this. Maybe. Yeah, we do. We still need it. Because we still use the state in the render. So we still need to initialize the state there. I take that back. But we could when the game starts, we could also force the state back to the initial state. So later on when we call it play again, just call start game. If that's true, we don't need play again. We can just call start game. And this is probably the simplest thing we could do to have the game start over. Let's hit and bust, play again. Right? The reason why we can do this is start game clears the state back to the initial state and does the Axios get. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So we can just hook that directly up to the click on play again. So now when we play, let's play it for real. 11, 21, stay, we win, play again. It's pretty complete. Right? So we have a component did mount that starts the game. We have a start game that resets the state back to some initial state, right? We've put this in here once so we can put it in the constructor and when we start the game. We make a new deck and store the deck ID. And then we call a function that when deck is shuffled, what does it do? It deals 2 cards to me and 2 cards to the dealer. That's pretty straightforward. When the component updates, as long as we're playing, we look to see if we went over 21, and if we do, we say we're busted and the game stops. dealing a card says, hey, if you're not playing, don't do anything. Await Axios getting, for this deck, this number of cards. Then when you're done, put that number of cards, push those to the end of the state for whichever player we asked for, and make that in the state. When we hit, we deal 1 card to me. When you stay, tell the state that the dealer cards are not hidden anymore. And as long as we have less than 17, await synchronously to deal 1 card to the dealer, and do all the checks to see who won or lost. We have a function that totals the hand that uses for each. Right? We could change this to reduce. I'll leave that as an exercise for y'all to figure out how to change this total hand to a reduce instead of a for each. Oh, and we have a total for the dealer hand. We should probably fix this up because we now have a total hand. We don't need this total dealer hand. I don't even think we're using it. We are not. So this whole function can go away, right? Because the total hand works for the player or the dealer. So the total dealer hand function goes. We have a helper for button class that tells us whether or not these buttons are shown or hidden. We have a helper function to show this message. To show this message, face down or the total. And then a render that shows us the game board. Right? We show the game results in the game result p tag. We have a button that's hidden if we're playing, or not hidden if we're not playing, that says play again, and the on click just starts a new game. We have a hit button that calls our hit function and is shown or hidden based on the button class. We then show the total hand for the player in total. We render a hand component and passing it the player's cards. For a stay button, we call the stay function that does all of the logic for the dealer. And the class name for this is the button class, so shown or hidden. For the dealer cards, we show that render dealer message, right, face down or the total. And then for the hand, we pass in this hidden, true or false, whether or not these cards are hidden or shown. And we pass the dealer's cards in to the cards component. We have a hand component that goes through all the cards we were passed and says the source for this image is such that if the index is more than 0, so we're on the second card or more, and we're hidden, show the card back image. Otherwise, show the image for this card. Render that image. And that's it. It's a lot, but it's a fully functional game. We could simplify this code a little bit. We're repeating the dealer wins here, right? So we could make this less than or equal to. Oh, I have an extra equals, you're right. Less than or equals to, that cuts out a little bit of code, right? We could simplify this even more by making this a ternary in here, right? Because these two things are basically the same except for the player wins or the dealer wins. So, you know what, let's not make it a ternary because there's a condition where that's not true. So let's leave it here. We could combine this. We could say if this dot total hand for the dealer is more than 21 or that simplifies that. Right, the dealer wins if the dealer's busted or the player has more than the dealer. Right. So there's a few things in here we could simplify, but I think this is pretty good. There's a lot in here, I think this is a good example of pretty much everything we've done so far in React.
Yeah.
So I think these will be a good couple of videos to go back and review, just to kind of see how we built all this up. We could potentially use React Router for this, where once we start a game, maybe what we want is when the app loads, not to show any game, but have there be a button that starts a new game, and then maybe the deck ID goes in here, right? And we just start playing the game. That's a thing. Maybe that's a thing to try out React Router on this. I don't think it's necessary. We could extract some of this into some more components, but this may be good enough for now. Right? There's some more components we could probably extract, but I think this is okay. One thing we could consider is, should the hand also include this total and the face down portion? Right? Should we move this and this kind of thing into the hand? Because it kind of relates to the hand, right? Showing the total and the thing, right? Maybe even your cards and dealer cards can move in there. I don't know, maybe. If you're looking for things to mess around with, see what happens if you try and move more of this portion of the user interface into the component that shows the cards. Try it, see if you like it or you hate it. Right? At this point now, once we have the functionality done, we have some flexibility to kind of change the code and see what makes it better and what makes it worse, what cleans it up and what makes it more complex. But I think we're at a point now where we've got something that's not too complex, but also works. Any questions on this other than like wanting to digest it more later?
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna be referring to this a lot.
Yeah, I think this is a good one in terms of like, this is fairly complex logic, right? Blackjack is seemingly simple but pretty complex. And we've added some fancy stuff, right? Like the hiding of the cards and the restarting of the game, right? How all that works. Oh, we actually tied this time and the dealer won, right? But I think everything is in here in steps. So if you go back and look at today's commits one at a time, you'll be able to see what we've done, right? Or flow back through the video and pause. I've tried to do a pretty good job of committing things along the way. So hopefully this gives you a fairly good step-by-step through how we did this. Don't expect to understand everything that's in it or be comfortable being able to reproduce it on your own, but I think this will be a good thing for like post review, right? Go back and kind of watch it again and see how it works, right? It's one of those cases where the techniques we've done today, you may look at them and say, oh, yeah, that makes sense to me, but you may not feel like you can do that on your own, come up with that approach on your own. It's likely a case of the more you practice this, the more you'll be able to do those. It's a leading, you'll appreciate it first, understand it next, and be able to reproduce it third, right? You're probably still in phase 1 or 2 for a lot of the things that we did in here. Especially the stuff with like async await, or the way we extracted the hand class, passing down the hiding and showing, right? The ternary for deciding whether or not we should show or hide a card. Some of those things, you just need to like rest with them for a while and try them. This may be a good one to try the thing where you start from the state where we started and see if you can proceed step by step, like read the commit history and see if you can replicate that step, right, on your own. But if you get stuck, peek at the code commit and take the hint and move forward. I think that process works pretty well, right? Try and reproduce this on your own, and if you can't, peek, copy and paste and move forward. Try again. If you can't, peek, copy and paste and move forward. Even if you like re-implement this 3 or 4 times, that flow will help you get more familiar with some of the techniques. Anything else before we close? Review at 3. Cool. I will post this so you all have it to look at.